America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
An American officials told Fox News Ukraine has agreed a peace deal with just some minor details to be sorted out. Top Ukrainian official Rustem Umerov on X saying his president could travel to the US in days to sign a deal.
Oh, by the way, no slow news day as a lot of us are rolling into Turkey Day and on the move. Holy cow, has it been a busy news day, actually. That Fox's Jonathan Savage, and yeah, one of the very big pieces of news is the framework we were hearing about over the weekend looks like it is materializing in real time and coming together in a peace deal, along with a number of other things. Hey there, it is Brian Mudd, guest hosting for the great one, Mark Levin. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. And I know a lot of folks are looking forward to having a good time, or you're stuck in traffic about now, one or the other, on your way from point A to point B. Either way, I do appreciate you sharing a little of your time with me over the next few hours. And, you know, talking about not being a slow news day. Holy cow. Holy cow. Now, there are some fun ones in here. Aside from the potential of Russia-Ukraine peace, you have stories like this out there today. University of Minnesota site warns of a whiteness pandemic. Urges white parents to re-educate. When I just kind of like out of the corner of my eye first saw this story today, I was thinking Minnesota, white out. I do think there's like a lake effect snow situations happening in the region off the Great Lakes here over the next few days. So no, whiteness pandemic is not lake effect snow. Whiteness pandemic to the University of Minnesota is in fact that we've got to re-educate the white folks. Got to re-educate the white folk. That's always fun. Man, you can feel good about your kids going to the University of Minnesota. No doubt about that. You have this. Dems move to set limits on Trump's donor-funded White House ballroom, claiming bribery in plain sight. It is a fascinating thing to see the extent of the TDS that is associated with the ballroom. It is one of the more remarkable things, actually, the extent to which your leftists are obsessing over the ballroom that President Trump is constructing. So, yes, there's big concern because, you know, Google and Apple and Meta are among corporate donors that have contributed to the ballroom. Well, hold on. Aren't Google, Apple, and Meta all companies that had worked hand in glove with the Biden administration to do all kinds of pretty awful things against Trump and conservatives generally, up to and including deplatforming at times? These people can't help themselves. You have a legal expert warns Letitia James against taking victory lap after dismissal without prejudice. So, yes, you have the news that's happened over the past day that you have New York prosecutor Letitia James and James Comey. Good old Tall Tales James Comey that had their cases thrown out on a technicality because the prosecutor who brought them is said to not have been properly appointed. So those, not only is there going to be an appeal on those cases, but likely to end up having some kind of accountability somewhere along the lines here. But yes, Letitia James taking her victory lap. You also have stories, one of my favorites, Sean Duffy. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, if you are hitting the airport, if you're on the move, you're flying for Thanksgiving, no more pajamas. Duffy wants you to stop wearing pajamas on airplanes. He's talking about bringing civility back. It's time to make civility great again. And that means no more PJs on the airplane, among other things. We'll have some fun with that later in the show. But where I wanted to start is with unprecedented peace that first happened in the Middle East, and now what we're seeing with Russia, Ukraine. President Trump is a historic uniter. He's a historic uniter. People are like, oh, but you always had those mean tweets and now the mean truth posts. They're mean, bad Orangemen. You know, it was so bad for so many people back in 2020. You know, my joke after the fact was that you had people that were so riddled with TDS, it'd be like, ooh, mean Trump tweets, give me Joe Biden. And that would be like a guy. You get all high-pitched and was so upset about the mean Trump tweets, so he went for Biden. Then realized, oh, elections have consequences. Let's talk about what's real, as a lot of people get so caught up in the rhetoric while underappreciating the reality. We do have a window of history, a window of time of unprecedented peace that's unfolding before our eyes this year. I mean, what we've witnessed already is unprecedented. What you've been witnessing is history. What we've already seen, something I never thought would happen. I thought for sure there would be zero chance that Hamas would surrender and release the remaining 20 hostages alive with Israel. Never thought that was going to happen. Never thought had a chance of recovering all of them alive. The ones that we knew to be alive at that point. That happened. And it wasn't just when over a month ago you had that Hamas-Israel peace accord. It was how Trump did it and how he continues bringing countries together. You know, that peace accord that was signed last month in Egypt, that ratified that deal. You take a look at everybody who came together in Egypt to be part of that. You had Algeria, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Canada, Egypt, France, Germany, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Jordan, Kuwait, Malaysia, Maldives, Morocco, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Norway, Oman, Pakistan. Yeah, the PLO that was actually there, Palestinian Authority, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Somalia, Spain, Sudan, Sweden, Switzerland, Tunisia, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and yeah, the United States. Think about all of those different countries that came together in the name of peace between Israel and Hamas. Who else in the world would have been able to unite so many varied countries? And people might point towards the UN. There's nothing unified about the UN. That place is an absolute disaster. So that day was a truly historic day. And what you have seen since, because you had all of the naysayers at the time saying what? Oh, there's no way that Israel-Hamas truce was going to hold, right? Well, here we are. What has it been 5-6 weeks at this point? It's held together. It's held together. And now, the final major peace for unprecedented peace appears to be coming together with Russia and Ukraine. And the key to all of this, you talk about peace through strength. When you take a look at how we got to this point, it was all about strength. It was all about overcoming all the perceptions of weakness, not just from the Biden administration, because Trump always had credibility on foreign policy matters, at least from his first administration. You know, one of the great ironies, I remember this back during the 2016 election cycle, when you would have, you know, Hillary Clinton and company warning about Trump having access to nuclear bombs. And I remember thinking, this is like the greatest thing ever from a point of peace. Like, let's say that you actually embraced Hillary and the left's idea that Trump really is the crazy man with the bomb. If you're a bad actor anywhere around the world, and you really do believe that Trump is the crazy man with the bomb, are you more or less likely to act poorly? I mean, what's the most likely outcome of that? I mean, there's just no logic to the argument. And then you had President Trump all the way back then that ran on what? Bombing the blank out of ISIS. Remember, because we had the ISIS caliphate that occurred, and then all the ISIS-inspired attacks here in the United States. And the situation has kept getting worse and worse because of the weakness of Obama back then. It was, Obama calling on the Muslim Brotherhood to rise up, and they did. And all the terror organizations around the world, Islamic terror groups, like, hey. And ISIS ended up becoming strong. They got the caliphate. They did all that. And then what happened? Trump got into office. He bombed the blank out of ISIS. And that was the end of it. You didn't hear anything about ISIS or Islamic terror really again until the Biden administration. And then look at that. The weakness allowed factions to pop back up. And we had to deal with some of those issues again. Well, when you take a look at what's set up, what we're seeing right now, the peace that's happened with Israel, Hamas, but the peace that we're on potentially the brink of with Russia and Ukraine. And it's a big question mark because, look, you can trust Putin as far as you can throw him. But in the grand scheme of things, is Putin necessarily worse than Hamas? Probably not. So there's that. But anyway, my lead story, I talked about this guesting for the Great One at the time. You go back to June on the situation with Israel and Iran at that point. Brought you a story. President Trump dropped the MOPs, and the world is on the brink of unprecedented peace. It was at that moment where I thought it was crystal clear that we were going to begin to see unprecedented peace. Because once you had President Trump that dropped the big one, he went full gap band on Iran. It might sound odd to talk about unprecedented peace coming out of dropping MOPs. With wars that have been raging at that point, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, at that point, Israel and Iran. But when Trump deployed the most destructive non-nuclear bombs on the planet, he set the stage for unprecedented peace. Based on the precision of the attack, the limited nature of it, the perceived success, it was clear that the world's leading sponsor of terror, which is Iran, had been neutered. Remember, President Trump ended up calling that Saturday evening presser and said he ended up doing the presidential address and said Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. And then remember the arguments that immediately ensued. Oh, they're not totally obliterated and everything else. That was back in June, right? Do you hear anybody on the left saying that anymore? Remember how the Trump administration for the first week was like, no, all of our intelligence officials, all of our agencies and our allies are saying totally obliterated. Yeah, but I went to MSNBC, what is now MS Now, and they said they weren't obliterated. All that's gone, right? So quite clear that Iran was fully neutered by those MOPs. And for decades, U.S. presidents, leaders from around the world had always said that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon. But all along, what happened? Iran played games. They continued to develop nuclear weapons. And in just a matter of minutes, with the dropping of those MOPs, it all ended. All those decades of presidents saying, we can't have Iran with a nuclear bomb. Trump, just like he did with ISIS, right? We're going to bomb the blank out of them. Boom! Caliphate gone. ISIS gone. And just like that with Iran. Gone. Decades of that buildup of the nuclear program. And there is no doubt that the world immediately became a safer place because he did that. But it wasn't just about neutering Iran. It was about restoring the credibility. The world immediately became a much safer place because Donald Trump was and is president of the United States. I'm going to pick up there next and move that forward. Brian Mudd in for the Great One.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out. I thought that one would have been gone quicker. We did 8. I thought that would have been an easier one, but I think we're making progress.
Yeah, the president talking today about the precipice of Russian-Ukrainian peace and going to walk you through what the framework is working off of right now. It is a remarkable moment in history that is playing out. And it's so ironic because you have so many people, Trump's so divisive. All of his mean posts on Truth these days and mean tweets of yesterday. All so mean. He's a divider. As you're getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving, he is one of the most prolific uniters of any world leader in world history. And we're seeing it day after day. You hear the numbers of people that die in war in this conflict. It's unreal. Tens of thousands every month. It's like, holy cow. Trump has led more unity than going to be at most Thanksgiving tables, probably, on Thursday throughout the course of this year, with a lot of actors that you never would have thought would have sat down at the table together. Talking about how this was all set up, where we have arrived at this point with Russia and Ukraine in peace. Mentioned that there's no doubt the world is a safer place today, not only because Iran's nuclear program was done in by Trump and dropping the MOPs, but because Trump specifically is president of the United States. You know, regularly during the Biden administration, I'd say that every day Joe Biden was president, the world was less safe. Every day that Donald Trump is president of the United States, the world is proving to be a safer place. Following the signing last month of the Israel-Hamas peace deal, Trump had this to say. He said, I think it really started when we took out the nuclear capability of Iran. When you look at what they had, you couldn't have made this deal with someone sitting over there with a nuclear weapon over your head. And so it's absolutely the case. And it was all part of my analysis at the time when this was going down, June 23rd. I said all this points towards the potential for unprecedented peace. And so here we are, just as Truman dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended World War II, dropping the MOPs, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities, opened up the potential for unprecedented peace. And we're seeing the benefits of it right now. I'll pick up there next. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Take the survey on America's future future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Do you ever talk back to your radio? Then you must be listening to Mark Levin. Pick up the phone and call 877-381-3811.
The United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever, and the president wants this war to end.
Bingo, and that plays into how what the MOPs accomplished in Iran led to where we are as we're on the brink, perhaps, of Russian-Ukrainian peace. Caroline Levitt talking about that and wanting the war to end. Hey there, happy Thanksgiving. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin, and you can always catch my podcast, The Brian Mudd Show, wherever you get your podcasts. Catch me socially at Brian Mudd Radio, and it is always truly an honor and a pleasure to be here with you as we're walking through how the president restored the credibility of the United States. Just like President Trump in his first term, immediately got after ISIS. He campaigned on bombing the blank out of ISIS. What had happened? He got into office. He bombed the blank out of ISIS. And what happened? Nobody messed around anymore. Not only was ISIS and their caliphate done, but we had peace. We had all kinds of peace. You take a look at how much progress had been made. Holy cow. The recognition of Jerusalem, the moving of our embassy there with all the presidents that had said for how many decades never did it. Oh, there's going to be a war if you do that. Well, there wasn't. It wasn't war until we got Biden. Then we had war all over the place because that's what happens with weakness. One of the keys here, as we're taking a look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine right now, as Trump said, in getting to the peace arrangement with Israel and Hamas last month, it wouldn't have been possible. And really the turning point was dropping the MOPs on Iran's nuclear facilities, because as long as Hamas had a nuclear threat backing their attacks, then you probably weren't going to get peace. That factored into the NATO situation. NATO! Remember that when Biden would say, NATO? He'd sound like he was dead. And then he would get to NATO in his script, and he would really punch it. NATO! So it's safe to say that serious peace talks with Putin wouldn't be possible if Putin didn't fear what munitions President Trump might deliver to Ukraine through, say, the next NATO purchase, which is a whole other thing, too, because remember, with Biden, our weapons just went straight to Ukraine, right? And Biden was like, yeah, we don't care about the American taxpayer, so here, you just take all this stuff. Yeah, we're $37 trillion in debt, but you just have it all. Trump is like, no, we're going to help you, but actually, we're going to sell this through NATO. NATO will go ahead and deliver this so that we don't hose the American taxpayers as well. I mean, every aspect of what he has handled has been so much better, so superior to what Biden had done. But credibility and strength has always been key when dealing with the world's worst actors. And what President Trump has done in a matter of months up to this point, it isn't just brokering the 8 different peace deals with 16 different countries. And President Trump has effectively prevented World War III while simultaneously bringing peace to the Middle East. Now it appears increasingly likely that we're going to get there in Ukraine. Which, by the way, here at home demonstrates that it is, in fact, Democrats who are divisive and petty. You always take a look at these things, and it's the credibility on various matters. Who is it that is really divisive and petty? Yeah, but Trump says mean things. Okay. President Trump has proven himself to be one of the greatest unifiers in human history. Where it actually matters, these peace arrangements. Yet TDS riddle Democrats, whether it's your city council to anybody in Washington, D.C., oh, he's just as divisive as can be. He's supposed to be the divider, right? And so they stand in opposition to him every step of the way, including through the longest partial government shutdown in history recently, which, by the way, illustrated a couple of points. First, and this is a bit of a divergence from what I'm talking about with the precipice of Russia-Ukraine peace, I think it's instructive. 34% of the federal government was shut down for over 5 weeks. Did anything in your life actually change? And the answer was, yeah, for some folks, it certainly did. If you were one of the federal employees, absolutely did. If you end up getting caught up in some of the travel headaches, especially near the end, no doubt. There were, all told, 27% of Americans, when I was doing my work on this, my analysis ended up coming up with 27% of Americans were directly impacted in some way by the partial federal government shutdown. So you got 3 numbers here. 34% of the federal government offline for over 5 weeks, so just over a third of the federal government. It happened 43 days was the round trip. 34% of the government for 43 days. 27% of Americans had a direct impact. And not like a direct impact necessarily every day, unless, again, you were a federal government employee who was impacted. There's a lesson in there somewhere, isn't there? I mean, obviously, it is time to dismantle and permanently disband a lot of the federal government bloat. But also, it is crystal clear for the entire world to see the true identity of a divisive, hate-filled, and frankly dangerous party in this country. How could they oppose everything that Trump does as Trump is bringing about unprecedented peace? And by the way, they always will talk about how we look to the rest of the world. How petty do you think these elected miscreants look as they endlessly conspire against the world's top unifier? Should Trump broker peace between Russia and Ukraine, you think we'll have more unity in this country, or will TDS continue to win the day despite President Trump's historic unifying and peace taking place? You know, we sadly know the answer, but the point remains that Democrats and TDSers generally, they're going to continue to look pettier by the day. As often it takes considerable time for history to understand the legacy of a presidency. It's rare that it is so clear what the impact is in real time. So often you need those years to go by, and sometimes decades, to get the full grasp of what's happening. Not here. Not here. You can see in real time the profound impact of what Trump is doing, these peace deals that are taking place, what the implications are. So about the situation with Russia, Ukraine, and the framework. There are 28 points that were said to be the framework for this peace deal. They were leaked to Axios over the weekend. It looks like they probably were legit based upon the reaction of the administration. And what we've been told today is that what the two parties have agreed to is slightly more favorable to Ukraine, whatever that means. So we know what the 28 points were that were the original framework that were being worked off of this weekend. And aspects of them evidently could be more favorable to Ukraine. So what I want to do is kind of work you through these points to take a look at what we've got. So when you look at the 28-point peace framework, the top one, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. It's the first point of the 28-point peace plan. The second one, a comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Ukraine, Russia, and Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered resolved. Okay? The third, Russia will not invade neighboring countries, and NATO will not expand further. Well, that's a pretty big deal because, of course, Ukraine's been trying to get into NATO right along. President Trump has indicated it's not going to happen. And it doesn't look like even a lot of the other NATO countries want that to happen because they're concerned about getting dragged into war with Russia as well. But that was one of the conditions. But again, remember, this is the framework that we are told ended up being a bit more favorable for Ukraine. So we don't know what may still exist like this and what may have moved a bit over the past couple of days. The fourth, a dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation to ensure global security and expand opportunities for economic cooperation. Okay. The fifth Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. The 6th, the size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel. It's kind of an interesting number, and one wonders if that isn't one of the ones that would have moved. If you take a look at these 28 different points where things could have moved in Ukraine's favor over where we were on Saturday when this was leaked, that might be one of them. Seems like a pretty arbitrary number. Number 7, Ukraine agrees to enshrine its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. Again, you wonder, does that one still look that way? Obviously, Ukraine not thrilled by that. Number 8, NATO agrees not to deploy troops in Ukraine. That was a big one as far as Russia was concerned. Number 9, European fighter jets will be deployed in Poland. The 10th, U.S. guarantee. The U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee. You can see Trump working in that one, getting guarantees on this deal. That, hey, we're going to offer our assistance. We're going to provide, some basis for maintaining the peace here. We're going to be compensated for it. So he worked that into it. Also under that 10th, if Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. And if Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a decisive coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated. Recognition of new territory and all other benefits of this agreement will be revoked. If Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without justification, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid. The 11th, Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is being considered. It's a big one for them. Number 12, a powerful global package of measures for Ukraine's recovery. Creation of a Ukraine development fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. The United States will work with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. Joint efforts to rebuild war-affected areas, to reconstruct and modernize cities and residential areas. Infrastructure development, extraction of minerals and natural resources. The World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate the efforts. All that under number 12. You see how much is here? We're not even halfway through it. Number 13. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case-by-case basis. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. So you can see he's getting the private sector in addition to the government in there while securing materials that we want and granting all of the economic opportunity that Russia would be interested in. And on that note, another one here, Russia will be invited to rejoin the G8. The 14th provision of the original framework, frozen funds will be used as follows. $100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in U.S.-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. The U.S. will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. So get that. You unfreeze the Russian assets, and then we'll get involved in help in the rebuilding efforts, and we'll get 50% of the proceeds from it all. And see the art of the deal all over this thing. Europe will add $100 billion to increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen, and the remaining frozen Russian funds will be invested in separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicles that will be implemented for joint projects in specific areas. The fund aimed at strengthening relations and expanding common interests to create a powerful incentive not to return to conflict. I mean, and we're just there. I mean, that's 14 of the 28, as you kind of see the theme for this framework that's coming together. I'll pick up there next. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Investigators from the FBI and DOJ, FBI is part of DOJ, are making this outreach to staff members on Capitol Hill to set up interviews with members of Congress who appeared in this controversial video. There are 6 of them, all Democrats, all of them appearing in this video, urging those serving to ignore military orders if they deem them unlawful.
Yeah, because that's the way it works. You just decide what the law is and what isn't. So the seditious 6 is something we're going to be talking about as we head into the second hour, and specifically what it is that they're trying to stop through their encouragement of a violation of their oath to adhere to the commander-in-chief. So we'll get into that coming up next hour. Working through the framework for the 28-point peace plan with Russia, Ukraine. And we're halfway there. We're through the first 14. And what we know of the framework, this original framework that was leaked over the weekend to Axios, is that, if anything, the terms that were outlined here have become more favorable for Ukraine than they were over the weekend. So we take this framework and we can operate in mind with knowing that, in theory, some of these things could be a little bit better for Ukraine than they were laid out here. And so the 15th that we're now up to, as part of this 28-point peace plan, a joint U.S.-Russian working group on security will be established to facilitate and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement. The 16th, Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. Number 17, the U.S. and Russia will agree to extend the terms of the treaties on non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons. Number 18, Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the treaty on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. Obviously significant. The nuclear power plant in the region will be operated under supervision, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine. The 20th, both countries commit to implementing educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting and understanding tolerance of different cultures, as well as eradicating racism and prejudice. You know, that was something that was put in place with the Israel-Hamas deal as well. That was a pretty big deal to getting that done, because you've had this indoctrination that's taken place. For that matter, based upon what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, too, you could have that like at the University of Minnesota. They could probably use that in some type of an agreement with the Trump administration. We'll be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
video set off a storm not only on Capitol Hill, but made its way to the Oval Office. President Trump calling for prosecutions of these members of Congress. The DOJ not commenting on any potential probe here. However, interviews with these members expected to take place in short order after the holiday.
Yeah, that Fox's David Spunt reporting on the seditious six Democrat members of Congress who recently put out that video saying, hey, we were in the service, or we were in, members of intelligence agencies previously. And look, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you don't think something is illegal, if you don't think it's legal, you don't need to do it. If Trump tells you to do something that's illegal and you think it's illegal, then you just don't follow those orders. Okay. Interesting. So, yes, you have the FBI that's going to be interviewing the seditious six after Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you, by the way. Cornucopia of news, you might say, today. No slow news day as we're rolling into Thanksgiving. And Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. Always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. And I hope you are going to have a wonderful get-together for Thanksgiving. Looking forward to it with my family and some friends. And one of the things we're seeing, President Trump has been about unification. There's a great irony because the perception is, oh, he's just the mean, bad Orangeman. And, ooh, the mean tweets and the mean truth post and all these things. He's so divisive. And he's out there creating historic peace accords. Around every turn, he's getting peace done. 8 different peace deals that he's already accomplished. I mean, if you take a look at how long he's been in office in his second term, Trump has accomplished about a peace deal a month, including between Israel and Hamas. And the one that's eluded him to this point has been Russia and Ukraine, but maybe not for a whole lot longer. So one of the things I was working through in the first hour, the 28-point framework plan. Now, this was a plan that was leaked to Axios over the weekend based upon the administration response. Looks like there was some credibility to this being framework that's being worked off of. What we have heard most recently is that, if anything, what is being agreed to, what's being worked on right now is more favorable, slightly more favorable to Ukraine. We don't know what that means, but we know what these 28 were. So we can kind of operate from there. And I had taken you up to the 20th in the first hour, and I want to go ahead and wrap up with those 28 before getting into telling you about these seditious six. What is it that they are actually encouraging potential sedition for? What is it that they are trying to get U.S. troops to do, to ignore in Trump's orders? How many lives have actually been saved by President Trump due to his anti-narco terror campaign? So I'm going to bring you information I'm sure you have not come across very shortly. But first, as we take a look at the rest of the 20th point of the peace plan that is being worked out here between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and protection of linguistic minorities. Both countries will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. Here's a big one. All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and banned. By the way, we will likely get to a bit of that coming up in the third hour. Speaking of Nazis, 21 territories. So this is a huge point of contention, and no doubt is a big part that you have Zelensky who's been pushing back on it. So under the 21st point, Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. And so these are territories that Russia has picked up. Now, Crimea goes all the way back to 2014. I mean, long before the current war that started under the Biden administration. And, that Crimea happened long before Zelensky was on the scene as president, for that matter. And one of the issues here right along has been Ukraine needs to get real that there's no winning this war outright. There's no getting back territory that they have already lost at a certain level. right along it seems like the Zelensky strategy, we're not giving up any territory. How? It really just seemed like Zelensky wanted us and or Europe to fight Russia for them, which would be World War III. It's not going to happen. And so the reality is there's no win ultimately for Ukraine in terms of territory. You have lost territory going back to 2014. There's no unpopping this cork. What do you expect the end game to be? And so these are likely the territories piece, this 21st one, likely to be a very difficult part of what's being hammered out here. Then you have a couple other regions where ongoing conflicts are taking place right now. It says hostilities will be frozen along the line of contact. Russia will relinquish other territories it controls outside of 5 regions where they are currently fighting. Ukrainian troops will withdraw from the part of the Donetsk region they currently control, and this withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral, demilitarized buffer zone belonging to Russia. Russian troops will not enter the demilitarized zone. And so, again, that's all part of the 21st point. It's on territories, and it's likely to be the biggest sticking point of them all with Zelensky. Maybe some of that became a bit more favorable if, in fact, that's what's happening here. The 22nd, once future territorial arrangements have been agreed, both Russia and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of a breach of this commitment. The 23rd, Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using it's a area river for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea. The 24th, a humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. All prisoners and remaining bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. All civilian detainees and hostages, including children, will be returned. You see some of what we saw with the Israel-Hamas deal kind of coming together here with this. A family reunification program will be implemented. Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of conflict victims. The 25th, and this is interesting. You wonder what Zelensky thought of this. Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. So if this agreement were to get done and that peace remains in place, Zelensky canceled elections, last year? So he stayed in office well past. So Ukraine to hold elections in 100 days. 26th, all parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. So the whole, war crimes thing, and that would go for Putin too, would not be recognized as being war crimes. This is one of the deals that Trump made with Hamas leaders. Hamas's leaders were not going to agree to anything if they were held personally accountable for war crimes. So one of the concessions that Hamas got, the leaders basically amnesty and on with things. You see that for both sides in this conflict. The 27th, this agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, headed by U.S. President Donald Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations. And last, and I don't know if it's least, but it says, once all parties agree to this memorandum, the ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to the agreed upon points to begin implementation of the agreement. So that is the entire original 28-point ball of wax that looks to be the framework that current Russian-Ukrainian peace is negotiated on. As we're hearing, we could be really close. And look, until we get there, we're not there, right? And there's no guarantee that Zelensky is going to be reasonable. There's no guarantee that you can trust Putin as far as you can throw him. But then again, when you take a look at all the other peace arrangements that Trump has made this year, none the least of which is with Israel and Hamas. I mean, look, if you can broker peace with Hamas, with an Islamic terror organization, if that can get done, then in theory, you would think you could drag Putin into a place of some type of constructive behavior. So we shall see. But that is what we are taking a look at. And as we're talking about the foreign policy elements of Trump's policy, and also we've had the news today about the FBI that is going to interview the 6 members of Congress that put together the video encouraging troops not to listen to President Trump. If they feel that they're illegal orders, because that's the way you go about it, right? In the field is, well, I don't know. Maybe this one's not illegal. I think I'll ignore this order. That would go very well. Very well-run military when you have everybody for themselves going, I don't know. What do you think about that order? Is that one legal? I don't know. I think I'll ignore it today. So let's talk about what is behind the seditious 6. The issue that the members of Congress are protesting. Those 6 members of Congress apparently want more Americans to die. Yeah, they apparently want more Americans to die. Because what I've got for you is updated research on how many lives have been saved by Trump's anti-narco terror campaign. And the first thing is, aside from the video put together by these Democrats, this topic just has not received as much attention as it probably deserves. The anti-narco terror campaign. And some of it's due to the operation having only really been conducted since early September, which means that we're still kind of early into some of the systemic impacts of President Trump's combating of drug cartels and narco-terrorists. And specifically, we're talking about when he blows the boats out of water, right? Some of these sensational images you've seen where, hey, here's a speedboat out in the middle of the Atlantic, and boom, there it goes. Not so much anymore. Boat gone. Terrorists, yeah, obliterated. So, as you take a look at what has actually taken place since that type of military action began, it's incredible. It's incredible. So I'll pick up there next. I'm Brian Mudd, and for the great one,
Mark Levin.
In all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot. Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, is visiting Trinidad and Tobago as part of his swing through the region to thank U.S. troops for standing at the ready this Thanksgiving holiday, as President Trump indicates that he is willing to meet with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and the U.S. continues to carry out aggressive military exercises in the Caribbean. The U.S. has formally designated Venezuela's so-called Cartel de los Soles, linked to disputed President Maduro, as a foreign terrorist organization, giving Washington legal cover for possible strikes inside the country.
Now, that's a big one. If we started doing strikes inside of Venezuela, there has been a lot of question about whether it might be more extensive than just going after narco boats en route to the United States in drug trafficking. Brian went in for Mark Levin, and we're going to talk about the lives saved by Trump's anti-narco terror campaign. And what's going on here all dates back to his first day in office. There's an executive order that he signed on his first day that set the stage for what has played out most recently. And also, so many lives that have already been saved. You hear things about this, and I think it's very abstract for a lot of people. Like, okay, great that there are some drug runners that are gone. Or, for leftists, how dare Trump unilaterally take out those poor men in those speedboats? I'm sure they're just, having a nice day in the Atlantic en route to the United States or the Pacific, because there have been so. And then they get blown up. Bad Orangemen. Whatever the case is. This is the route that is the basis for the seditious, potentially, acts of these 6 members of Congress. And it also is central to what I previously identified as a 30% reduction in drug running into this country. My analysis on this, when I conducted it in late October, showed that, okay, with these narco boats that have been blown out of the water, what have we accomplished? Approximately 30% of the drug running into this country have been disrupted through the administration's counter-narcotics task force. So I mentioned this started on the first day of the Trump administration. It was an executive order on his first day entitled Designating Cartels and Other Organizations as Foreign Terrorist Organizations and Specially Designated Global Terrorists. And so the order accomplished 2 outcomes. The first was to specifically identify the drug cartels, many by name in the order, as terrorists. Why is that important? Well, because the president of the United States has the ability to do what? You have terrorists that are acting against the United States. You can take them out right there on the spot, right? You don't have to phone Congress. There's going to be a terrorist action in progress harming Americans. Yeah, you can go blow them up. You can go take them out. And that is the executive authority that President Trump has used on these narco boats. No different than any other terrorist action that a president has taken. Unless, you want to go, maybe what it is with these seditious 6, maybe they just want to go back to the Clinton policy. The Bill Clinton policy. Remember when he was in office and we learned that he was contacted while he was on a golf course that the United States had a clean line to take out Osama bin Laden? And he's like, no, I'm here on the golf course. You go ahead and let 9/11 happen. Just let 9/11 happen. I'm going to play me some golf. Don't bother me with taking out Osama bin Laden. Remember that? So, yeah, 9/11 happened because we didn't take out terrorists. Just a thought. Pick up here next. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
In all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot. Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
The cost of freedom is high, but this phone call is not. Call Mark Levin toll-free at 877-381-3811.
The complaint, detailed in a letter from the House Committee on Education and Workforce, alleges Berkeley Unified School District staff encouraged walkouts where Jewish students were isolated, and that at one, students were allegedly chanting, "Kill the Jews." The committee, alleging the claims violate students' civil rights, also sending letters to Fairfax County Public Schools in Northern Virginia and the School District of Philadelphia, requesting documents from all three districts by December 8th.
Yeah, that's fun, right? Fox's Kristen Goodwin with that report. The House has taken up an anti-Semitism probe for school districts and specific schools across the country because of some of the events that you just heard. We're going to dive into anti-Semitism and actually the whole situation with Marjorie Taylor Greene and how that really plays into a battle at the very periphery of this issue on the right. And so a couple things that are coming into focus with that, I'm going to bring around full circle for you because the blow up between Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, what that represents is a very good thing for the Republican Party, for the country, frankly, as we need to distance ourselves in every corner from the anti-Semitism we continue to see. And the left continues to provide a home for it, not only in their party, but in schools. In schools. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin, and I'm going to break down the lives that have been saved by Trump's anti-narco terror campaign, something that I'm sure that you have not heard to date. As you have heard perhaps in the news today, talked about it a bit, you have the FBI that is now going to set up interviews after Thanksgiving for the 6 Democrat members of Congress who put out the video encouraging those in the military to ignore the president's orders if they think it's illegal. Just go ahead and do what you want. Go ahead and ignore it. So, a couple of things. The narco terror situation, what we have seen play out. There was a day one executive order that the president signed, and it designated cartels, many by names, as terror organizations. And it's important because that's what grants the president the authority to act without a declaration of war or, to be able to say, okay, well, this is a narco boat from Venezuela. It's a terrorist group. Our intelligence officials say this is what it is. Boom, goes the boat now. The order that President Trump signed on his first day in office read like this. Said the cartels have engaged in a campaign of violence and terror throughout the Western Hemisphere that has not only destabilized countries with significant importance for our national interest, but also flooded the United States with deadly drugs, violent criminals, and vicious gangs. The cartels functionally control through a campaign of assassination, terror, rape, and brute force nearly all illegal traffic across the southern border of the United States. In certain portions of Mexico, they function as quasi-governmental entities controlling nearly all aspects of society. The cartel's activities threaten the safety of the American people, the security of the United States, and the stability of the international order in the Western Hemisphere. Their activities, proximity to, and incursions into the physical territory of the United States pose an unacceptable national security risk to the United States. It is the policy of the United States to ensure the total elimination of these organizations' presence in the United States and their ability to threaten the territory, safety, and security of the United States through their extraterritorial command and control structures, thereby protecting the American people and the territorial integrity of the United States. Okay, so day one executive order, and when the president outlines in this EO that the cartel's activities threaten the safety of the American people, and it is the policy of the United States to ensure total elimination, I don't know why it's a surprise that many months later, because again, this is January 20th, this is signed, we're blowing narco boats out of the water. I don't know how that necessarily comes as a surprise with the backdrop of that policy. So anyway, what ended up happening after that executive order, and this is the case with almost all EOs like this, it tasks various different government agencies to come up with best practices for how to combat these terror organizations, and also to make sure that we have a plan in place to identify exactly who these actors are so that we don't blow up the wrong people. And that happened. That plan came together, and the president outlined in early August, okay, we've got a plan now. And he announced that he had authorized military force against narco-terrorists. Okay, so first day in office, signs the executive order. In August, President Trump publicly announces, hey, got everything in place. We're gonna do this now. And then you still had a few more weeks that went by. It wasn't until September that the Trump administration began the campaign that has resulted in the regular military strikes targeting vessels of suspected drug trafficking in the Caribbean Sea, and mostly in the Eastern Pacific Ocean on a couple of instances. Primarily what we've had is happening off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia. And so most recently, the campaign was formalized under Operation Southern Spear. That took place on November 13th. And the military action against narco-terrorists includes the use of U.S. Navy warships, helicopters, MQ-9 Reaper drones, and emerging robotic systems to sink or destroy boats alleged to carry narcotics like cocaine, fentanyl, whatever else. And so, by the way, can you imagine being these drug runners, and then all of a sudden you've got a Reaper drone that's over you. It's going to be over pretty quick, but it'd be quite the sight out there, I'm sure. So anyway, as of today, since the operation began in September, there have been 21 strikes against 22 vessels, focusing on groups like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, Colombia's ELN guerrillas, and we are told that there are 83 designated terrorists that have been killed. Okay, so when you hear about the seditious six, this is what they're upset about. They're upset that we have had 83 designated terrorists that have been killed. So the administration claims that these actions have saved American lives. And there have been a lot of people that are disputing whether or not it really made a difference, in addition to whether the president had the authority to do anything like this. Well, I mentioned that my initial analysis, when I was taking a look at what had been happening with drug trafficking into this country, that it looked like approximately 30% of the drug running had been disrupted. Has there been a tangible impact in the United States to date? Oh, heck yes. In comparing drug overdose deaths, I was trying to figure out what is a way that I can illustrate the point about lives saved. We're talking about drug runners here, right? In the case of these narco boats. So, all right, let's go back. There are 2 full months of operations, September and October. This has been taking place, right? So, went back to September and October of 2024. Took a look at what happened this year in those 2 months. And here's what the story said. These are drug overdose deaths. Last September, September of 24, there were 7,200 Americans that died of drug overdoses. This September, 5,500. Kind of a big deal, big drop. In October, last year, 7,000 drug overdose deaths. This year, 5,400. Now, that's a total of thousands fewer drug overdose deaths. You're talking about a drop of 4,000 plus drug overdose deaths, a 23% decline. So you have, when you put all this together, 2 months, taken the drug overdose deaths in this country down by about a quarter, just the first 2 months. And by the way, when go ahead and compare that with my initial analysis, where it's like, looks like approximately 30% of the drug running activity into this country has been disrupted. Boy, that washes pretty cleanly with a 23% decline in ODs as well. So we're saving thousands of lives This is what the left is so upset about. 83 dead terrorists and thousands of Americans that have been saved already. What it has to be wrong? How broken in the brain do you have to be to have a problem with this? And so you have the left that now is going to encourage sedition? Why? Because we want the 83 terrorists to still be alive, and we want those thousands of additional deaths due to drug overdoses in this country? And imagine if that's what happens within the first 2 months, what's going to happen if we keep this up? I don't think you're going to have a lot of people that are raising their hands saying, hey, you know what I want to do is get in one of these boats and, run some drugs over to the United States. Probably going to have a even greater impact ongoing. I'm not sure what recruitment is going to look like for the terrorist organizations doing the drug running that way. It's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. By the way, if you went ahead and you projected this out over the course of the year, then you start to take a look at the impact, the run rate through the first couple of months, and then the overall decline in drug overdose deaths. You're talking about tens of thousands of Americans that are saved per year, let alone all the others that end up addicted to drugs that don't die of overdoses, but just live miserable lives and the horrible impacts on communities. I mean, just absolutely insane. All right, Tom is standing by in Georgia. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, Tom, you're on. How you doing?
Hey, great. Happy Thanksgiving. And, I always appreciate when Brian Mudd substitutes for the great one, because you always do, I can't say great, but I'll say excellent job when you come in on for Mr. Levin.
Well, God bless you. I appreciate that.
So I am, and you've given me reason in your earlier comments for me to be wearing this T-shirt that says "Make America Grateful Again." And Donald Trump has done that, and you enumerated a number of those things about all the peace that's breaking out all over the world because of the efforts of Mr. Trump and his administration and the intervention of the Almighty, I believe. So I just wanted to wish you and all the listeners a wonderfully happy Thanksgiving. And I am very grateful to be here in this wonderful country. And Donald Trump has had, it's great. And next year, in our 250th anniversary, isn't it going to be wonderful that we have an American president who actually loves the country?
Amen to all of that. Tom, thank you very much. Well said. I like that. Make America Grateful Again. Very appropriate for Thanksgiving, and very appropriate that we're talking about the amount of unification that's happened around the world. The peace that has broken out, the historic peace deals, the 8 that have already been brought about by President Trump, potentially number 9, the one that's been elusive to this point with Russia and Ukraine, and where we would be at that point. And then also right down to the combating of terrorism, as we're talking about here, and already thousands of lives saved through just a couple of months of operations against these narco-terrorists. There's so many positive things that are playing out across the country. It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day in the news cycle, but and the man's so busy. That's the other thing, too. You take a look at just how much he gets accomplished. Here we are. Most people are like, okay, how am I getting from point A to point B for Thanksgiving? And Trump's sitting there hammering out the final details, peace between Russia and Ukraine. The man never stops. It's incredible. But yeah, appreciate you being there. Appreciate everybody. Thank you, Tom. Thanks to everybody listening. And do hope that this is a wonderful Thanksgiving for you and your family. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
In all the time I've been supporting Pure Talk, my wireless company, I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this from them before. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, and unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot Just $29.95 a month for life. Friends, this is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month. Now through December 7th, that's it. Just $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network. But this offer is extremely short-lived. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's Levin for Pure Talk's best unlimited plan. Just $29.95 a month for life. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, and start saving with unlimited for life for just $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends December 7, 2025.
The mayor is incompetent, and the governor is a big fat slob. He ought to invite us in, say, please make Chicago safe. We're going to lose a great city if we don't do it quickly.
That was pretty funny. So when President Trump was pardoning the turkeys today, that was one of the things he ended up saying about Chicago and not being welcomed into the city the same way that his presence has not been welcomed into a lot of different places that there have been a lot of successes in, starting with Washington, D.C., the resistance in L.A. You know, Memphis has been a huge success story as you had cooperation there. It's amazing to me, as you had President Trump talking about Benton Johnson, the Chicago's mayor, and then also J.B. Pritzker. He's the fat slob, which, by the way, you have folks on the left say, see, he's a divider. He's the big fat orange, but he's a divider, a big fat slob. J.B. Pritzker is a big fat slob. One of the things that's kind of funny when President Trump was saying that, by the way, you could actually hear him doing like the mental reach for the lever. The first thing that he was going for, whatever his first thought was when he came to Pritzker, he's like, all right, don't do that one. And then he got to the second, and he's like, probably not that one. And then quickly transitioned to the third, which was the big fat slob. So he did exercise some restraint there. You could hear the mental maneuvering there as he reached for what I think was the third lever rather than his first two go-tos. But why in the world would these places not want to clean up their cities? Imagine having you live there. These are your communities, and you have people suffering. Talking about how demented Democrats and the left in this country really are, where they prioritize illegal immigrants over you, and they prioritize criminals over you and your community. Who in their right mind wouldn't want to take the president's help to clean up their city? You got major crime problems, and at this point, you have the success that we've seen in Washington, D.C., and the success that we've seen in Memphis. No, we like our crime. We like having, dozens of people murdered in the average weekend in Chicago. It's great. You have the seditious six that are like, no, we like having thousands of Americans die of drug overdose deaths per month. Let's keep that going. Let's keep the terrorists alive. These people really are sick. Going to dive into Trump's divorce with Marjorie Taylor Greene, what it means, that and more coming up next. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
He used an autopen last year for the turkey's pardon. So I have the official duty to determine, and I have determined that last year's turkey pardons are totally invalid.
Yeah, so the president today of the turkey pardons talking about Biden using the autopen to pardon last year's turkeys. There is next level hilariousness that's involving Trump and Team Autopen. So when you go into the Oval Office, you have the portraits of presidents. And so you have, as you are entering the Oval Office, and it's been this way for, I don't know, at least 2 months now, you've had President Trump's 45th official picture. And then you had what used to be Biden, and then Trump's current picture, his official portrait, which, by the way, was his mugshot that he turned into the portrait for his, the 47th administration. Well, recently, a couple months ago, you had President Trump, as big as the portraits of him going into the Oval Office, become Joe Biden's autopen. And so you see Trump, you see Joe Biden's autopen, and then you see Trump again in his current portrait. And now Trump still trolling him, talking about even the turkey pardons last year done by Team Autopen. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin. Happy Thanksgiving to you. It is always an honor and a pleasure being here with you. You can catch my podcast, The Brian Mudd Show, wherever you get your podcast, broadcasting from my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach, actually just miles from Mar-a-Lago. And it is really, I think, a remarkable time that we're living in, the history that we're experiencing in real time. And through the first 2 hours of the show, ended up breaking down the peace accords being worked on with Russia and Ukraine, and how President Trump set it up when he dropped the MOPs on Iran, destroying their nuclear facilities, set the stage for the Israel-Hamas peace deal. And there's so many things there. Again, I mentioned, you go back to after Trump dropped the MOPs, you have the left to try to say, oh no, Iran still has nuclear capabilities. And nobody talks about that anymore. Why? Because Trump was right. They were obliterated. That set the stage for Israel and Hamas to have peace, something that the left also said wouldn't get done. And by the way, getting the hostages back, the 20 alive, and still recovering remains for that matter. The peace has held. And now, most recently, we could be on the brink of peace with Russia and Ukraine. Also talking about the seditious six and how you have these members of Congress who are actively seeking to undermine the president of the United States as he combats narco-terrorists, having taken out 83 so far. And through the first 2 months of operations against these narco boats, these drug runners, has saved provably thousands of lives. Thousands of lives. But Democrats don't want it. Democrats in cities like Chicago, LA, they don't want the Trump administration to assist with cleaning up their cities, to bring down crime, to bring down violence. I mean, you take a look. If you were going to elect people that would try to cause harm to you and your family, how could you do much better than electing Democrats these days? Whether you're talking about in Washington, D.C. or right there in your city. I mean, they actively are on the side of what's not in your interest. It's a fascinating thing. There's something else, though, and it's not all about what goes on the left. There's a battle on the right. There always is. And so I'm going to get into Trump's MTG divorce and also the battle for the soul of the GOP. The ousting of Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think, has also been a really critical thing. And I'm going to walk through why, along with anti-Semitism and how it needs to be rooted out, including in the fringe factions on the right, something that Mark Levin has been battling all year. Punks like Tucker, for example. But first, before we get into that, have a couple folks who want to weigh in. George is in New Jersey. George, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
I wanted to feed a little bit off of that narco-terrorism concept you've been speaking to. You're talked to be from Passaic County, New Jersey, and here in Passaic County, New Jersey, we have a governor, and our Governor Murphy says, hey, marijuana is legal. Now, the president's looking around and trying to take these boats out for bringing drugs into our country. And here we have a governor, and in Passaic County, in my town, there are 17 cannabis dispensaries. 17, with cannabis being the gateway drug to all drugs. And this is legal. Statewide, it's legal, but federally, it is illegal. And I wonder when Trump's going to get around to maybe start to look at the states and say, you know what, we're going to close down these dispensaries in New Jersey. Not only just take out these ships that are bringing these drugs into the country, but let's close out the drugs that are opening the gateway to get our children involved in drugs and adults involved in drugs right here in Passaic County, New Jersey. I wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, George. Well, there are a couple things. And one, Trump, the man doesn't even drink, right? So when it comes to substances, he is no fan. He's not going to be somebody who's an apologist for marijuana. However, the one thing that is different, if you want to take a look at that specifically versus his first administration, is actually softened his stance. The one, to your point, marijuana in form has been illegal right along because it is still a Schedule I drug with the federal government. And that's the same schedule that cocaine is and anything else, any fentanyl, you name it, heroin, Schedule I drugs. And so it doesn't matter if a state says, oh, this is legal. It doesn't matter if you have medical marijuana and it's sanctioned, which it is in many states across the country, including even mine in the state of Florida. It still is not federally legal, which is why, for example, those that operate in these state-sanctioned environments can't bank, for example, can't have legitimate banking operations because, well, it's federally illegal. I have forever been annoyed by the inconsistencies. I am a rule of law person. I do believe that if you are going to have laws, you need to adhere to them. If something is federally illegal, it needs to be cracked down on when it comes to the states. However, in this regard, I don't think you're going to get what you want out of Trump because he has softened his stance. He has taken a review of marijuana to maybe at some point remove it from Schedule I status. And so, we'll see where that goes. But combating the drug trafficking that's taking place into this country, definitely his focus. I don't know that you're going to get any action when it comes to your talking about marijuana in your community specifically, especially stuff that is grown.
How about a DOT license? Let's say you want to get a DOT license. You wonder, what does the government know that we don't know? So if you take a controlled substance, if you are on Percocet and the doctor monitors you, if you have a benzodiazepine and the doctor monitors you, well, you know what? In theory, you have a DOT license. You can drive a tractor trailer full of dynamite into Manhattan. But wait a second. If you have the smallest trace of cannabis, the tiniest bit of cannabis in your bloodstream, you cannot drive an oversized pickup truck with an air conditioner in the back. You'll get ticketed and you'll lose your DOT license.
Yeah, no, George, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate the call and your passion as well. You're not wrong here. It's just that I don't think you're going to get what you want out of Trump on this one. And, the ship has been sailing the other way on this for a while, although there is more and more research that's coming out that's suggesting that, to your concerns, maybe marijuana is more of the gateway that it used to be referred to as, and some of the negative consequences, even of medicinal marijuana use over a longer window of time. So, maybe some of that research will, and this pendulum, swing things back the other way. But yeah, my opinion on what you're going to see here in terms of Trump's combating, I don't see that happening right now. Let's go to Brian in Massachusetts. Brian, welcome to the show.
Okay, ready.
Hey, Brian.
I'm ready.
Hey, Brian, you're on. You are ready, and you're actually on the air.
All right. I love it, man. I love being introduced that way. Let's face it, the drugs being sent into this country, it's long, well overdue that we start sinking some of those ships out in the water there. Those freaks poisoning our children and our friends and killing so many Americans through the years. And I just hope they just follow them every step of the way, and they have all kinds of intelligence on this and get right to the people, the suppliers, right down to the people who are just dealing it out in the streets. That's how bad it is. And President Trump, with the seditious six, let's face it, there's young people in the military. People don't realize some people join up at 17 with their parents' approval and signature, You can influence somebody. Some of these young 17, 18-year-olds have the heart of George Washington, but some could be influenced at any age and one day decide to disrespect a commanding officer, and they end up getting thrown or court-martialed. So let's face it, that was unnecessary, was said by them six.
No doubt. Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. Brian in Boston there. It's a great call. No, you're exactly right. I mean, the first part that is absurd is just outwardly campaigning for those in uniform to make a judgment call about whether a designated terrorist organization is in fact a designated terrorist, and therefore whether you should carry out your mission to take out the terrorist. It is the most remarkable thing in the world. And I use the example, Bill Clinton, obviously, hindsight, I'm sure Clinton takes the shot when he's at the golf course if he knew 9/11 was going to happen, but he didn't. And we actually knew that bin Laden had been behind the first World Trade Center attack in 93, and still Clinton let that one go. And so we ended up with 9/11. What happens if Trump isn't doing what he's doing? Well, we already know that we'd have thousands more Americans that'd be dead right now. And somehow or another to the left, that's okay, let alone other implications, as President Trump outlined in his order. The people that are raped and tortured and trafficked and all these other horrible things that come about with these cartels. How in the world you could have the left that campaigns on their behalf would be beyond me, except that these are the same people, again, that wanted open borders, allowing criminal, illegal immigrants into our country. People that, as I illustrated, were 914% more likely to commit a crime than you or me, than the average American. And they were and still are supportive of them, supportive of crime in their communities. They'd rather have that than have the president come in and clean up city. I don't know how you could possibly vote for your own interest and still vote for your rank and file Democrat, whether you're talking about in your city council or certainly a federal politician. All right, so I talked about getting into Trump's divorce with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the battle for the soul of the GOP. I'm going to dive into this because I think this is also a very important dynamic and something that Mark has been working on all throughout the year. So I'm going to dive into that next. I'm Brian Mudd, and for the great one,
Mark Levin.
The turkeys being pardoned today go by the names of Gobble and Waddle. When I first saw their pictures, I thought we should send them, I shouldn't say this. I was going to call them Chuck and Nancy. But then I realized I wouldn't be pardoning them. I would never pardon those two people.
Oh, so yeah, the turkey pardon, the jokes, Trump with the jokes, only kind of. Chuck and Nancy. Speaking of retreads, Pelosi, they'll be gone after this Congress. And who knows what's going to happen with Chuck after he is in the process of being thrown overboard after his failure during the partial government shutdown. By the way, I forget which one was which of the two turkeys today. I took a look at one of those. One of my buddies, White House correspondent John Decker, he was on hand for the festivities today. And I'm like, that turkey thing is massive. He said it was a 50-pounder. One of those turkeys was a 50-pounder. I think Pritzker could still probably pound that one away if it wasn't pardoned. Let's talk a little bit about the battle for the soul of the GOP. Something that I have been cheering on for some time finally came to fruition, and that is an end to a certain faction of the GOP congressionally. Really needed to happen. What just went down with MTG. The Band-Aid that was ripped off of the stitched together and increasingly frayed relationship between President Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. You go back a couple weekends ago, it was the Truth Social post that Trump put out there where he said, I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman. One of the things that was great about this, too, is he put Congresswoman in quotations, of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia, Over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, including a total and complete victory on the shutdown, closed borders, low taxes, no men and women's sports or transgender for everyone, ending DEI, stopping Biden's record-setting inflation, biggest regulation cuts in history, stopping 8 wars, rebuilding our military, being respected by every country in the world, as opposed to being the laughingstock that we were just 12 months ago, having trillions of dollars invested in the USA, and having created the hottest country anywhere in the world from being a dead country just 12 months ago, and so much more. All I see wacky Marjorie do is complain. Kind of get the sense of like it being another Marsha. I understand that wonderful conservative people are thinking about primarying Marjorie in her district of Georgia, and they, too, are fed up with her and her antics. And if the right person runs, they'll have my complete and unyielding support. She has gone far left, even doing The View with their low IQ, Republican-hating anchors. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And I always like it because the way that Trump will finish off some of his posts on Truth, you can tell that it's like, and this is an official statement. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is an official policy position of the President of the United States. Back to you. And how long did she last? A week. She lasted a week before she announced that she was resigning from Congress after Trump said, yeah, I'm not with you anymore. This is a very important moment for the party. And I'm going to explain why, break it down, coming up next, because she had been at the root of what's wrong on the periphery of the right. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin, simply the smartest man on radio. And you can call him 877-381-3811.
Walmart announced that the cost of their standard Thanksgiving meal is 25% lower than just 1 year ago. That's a big deal. According to the USDA, the price of Thanksgiving turkey is down 33% from its Biden-era highs.
There you go. Trump working on making Thanksgiving affordable again as he is pumping up his affordability agenda, as he's really going to focus on that heading into the midterms. Of course, one of the things that'll be really important to watch in all this, what the Supreme Court has to say about tariffs. That is one thing. There's one irony when it comes to the tariffs, and this is for a different time, and that is, in terms of affordability, may work to his advantage if he does end up losing that case. So stand by. So as Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin, and talking about Trump's divorce with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and also the battle for the soul of the GOP. And mentioned going back a couple weekends ago, Trump had enough with Marjorie Taylor Greene, ended up putting out this prolific post on Truth calling her wacky. And it was a short time later that he followed that up with another post on Truth where he introduced another nickname. It wasn't a Lion Ted or a Little Marco, but it was probably worse. Trump ended up posting, Marjorie Traitor Greene is a disgrace to our great Republican Party. And there were a couple things that were pretty clear, and that was she would not be long for her position. And again, it only turned out to be about a week before she announced that she would be resigning from Congress. And I was thrilled when I saw this from Trump. A lot of people were kind of nervous on the right. Oh, you know, the House Republican margin is slim as it is. And some people, for some reason, liked Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know. I mean, but this had been long overdue. Going back to when Republicans regained control of the House of Representatives in January of 2023, I started discussing specific and growing problems within the Republican Party that at the time were kind of centered around Matt Gaetz and his outsized ego, but also his personal agenda that led to a series of unnecessary problems and missteps. You know, whether you ever liked Kevin McCarthy or not, back when he was House Speaker and getting to that point, it was never with Gaetz about McCarthy, not him from a point of ideology. Matt Gaetz's issue was always that McCarthy wouldn't do whatever he could to make the House investigation into Gaetz's personal issues, alleged activities that he had engaged in with drugs and underage girls in Florida. He wanted that to go away. And McCarthy said he couldn't do anything about that, and he didn't go out of his way to try. That was why Gaetz at first tried to prevent McCarthy from becoming House Speaker and eventually threw him overboard. But you might remember when Mike Johnson became House Speaker, Gaetz ended up doing something very similar. Tried to throw him overboard. And by the way, Trump actually stepped in and was a huge reason why that never happened. A lot of people didn't know this, but the number one person to Trump while he was out of office turned out to be Mike Johnson. He spent a lot of time in Mar-a-Lago working on the agenda. Part of the reason why Trump was able to get so much done so quickly when he became president again this year is because he had spent the past 3 years working on that agenda. And Mike Johnson was there to carry it out. It's part of the reason he needed him to be House Speaker when he became president again. It was something that Trump learned from everything that did not go the way that he wanted to during his first term. When he got in, Republicans had a majority, and then he still had a hard time getting his agenda passed, including his Tax Cut and Jobs Act not getting passed until December of his first year in office. So Gaetz was always about Gaetz. He was always about his own agenda. But he also attracted certain members. And you might remember in particular that essentially his closest friend at the prior Congress was none other than Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it wasn't just that birds of a feather kind of come together on the surface. There's actually more to the story. And I think in multiple respects, a battle for the soul of the party. And I'll just throw some names at you. And you can tell me what they all have in common. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes. And one of the answers is that they all like Jews about as much as Mamdani. All like Jews about as much as Mamdani, at least by way of what they've said in actions in recent years. And by the way, that had been true of Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene too. And I'm not going to waste time on revisiting everything that Gaetz said and did because he is thankfully not relevant anymore. But as the American Jewish Committee said at the time of his very brief nomination about a year ago now for Attorney General, they said at a time of historic levels of anti-Semitism, we need someone at the helm of the Department of Justice who will tackle anti-Semitism, not peddle in it. Matt Gaetz's history of problematic remarks, including perpetuating anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, should be disqualifying for anyone seeking to be America's top law enforcement officer. We urge President-elect Trump to reconsider the nomination. Otherwise, the Senate has a responsibility to reject it. Well, and as for Marjorie Taylor Greene, she had previously stated that Jews used lasers to create California's wildfires to profit from them. By the way, that was something that she only walked back about 3 weeks ago. I mean, yeah. And she had also spoken at white nationalist events with Nick Fuentes. Might recall back in 2022, she was called on it because she was found to be speaking at one of his white nationalist events. And I don't even know who Nick Fuentes is. Okay, please. And if you're not familiar with Fuentes, I mean, he's flat out said that Jews have no place in Western civilization. And by the way, this is something that Tucker has increasingly been on board with too. You have likely heard Mark talk about Tucker and a lot of these jokers at length. He's been battling them for a long time. The bottom line is that there's no place for anti-Semitism in the GOP. Or anywhere in our society. And from AOC and Tlaib and their squad to most recently Mamdani, I mean, the Democrat Party has proven they're on board with providing a home for racist hate politically in this country. They have been the basis for it. And it hasn't been a real recent thing. You know, if you go back to the squad, that was 2018. That was the 2018 election cycle. They've been in place since then. So the Democrat Party is the base of anti-Semitism, of racist hatred in this country. It definitely doesn't have any place in the party of Lincoln or in a country, period, that's founded on Judeo-Christian values. So from the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem to the Abraham Accords, President Trump has been the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish president in history. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said on multiple occasions. I mean, for that matter, his oldest daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. But it's been an abomination that there have been those on the fringe of the MAGA movement that have attempted to corrupt what it represents to advance a misguided culture of hate. One that in most instances, they evidently don't understand. Because you'll commonly have these fringe actors invoke Christianity while advancing anti-Semitism. And that one has always been fascinating to me. Always fascinating to get these fringe actors that will talk about Christianity while advancing anti-Semitism. And without getting deep into the theology, this just in, not possible to be a true follower of Christ and to be anti-Jews too. Doesn't work that way. And the greater irony is that if those who have taken up hate for Jews had it their way, you know, the Bible, if you say you're a Christian, you're like, yeah, down with the Jews, down with Israel, doesn't work out the way. Doesn't work out the way that you think. And frankly, be a pretty miserable end for them and for everybody left behind. But anyway, for now, the Trump GOP divorce from Marjorie Taylor Greene, a very positive step towards combating a cancer that has grown rapidly in our society in recent years and has been present with a very small but seemingly growing group of hate mongers on the MAGA periphery. And so her resignation in January, it's a super positive step for constituents. It's a very positive step for the GOP and for the country, just as getting rid of Matt Gaetz was as well. One of the best things that could have happened for this country as well. And one of the things that, in talking about this, I've realized is that a lot of people are not necessarily versed in the matters of Israel and anti-Semitism. One of the things that was interesting in talking about this recently on my show, and a number of people that would send me definitions, and these are people who largely maybe were defending Tucker or defending, to a certain degree, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Fuentes or whomever. And I get it. There are a lot on the right that have been taken in, including I found a lot of people that didn't even necessarily know what they were being exposed to with some of these people, which is another problem with it existing on the right. People get taken in by these racist haters. So, breaking this down, I found out that a lot of people just did not know what anti-Semitism is. I had people that would send me definitions, and I didn't have a single person send me a correct one that wanted to take me on this issue. And so I also think it's kind of important to walk through Israel for a moment and also anti-Semitism. And it also explains the whole Palestinian situation. So the real quick history lesson, Israel established as a Jewish state on May 14th, 1948, a few years after the end of World War II. You had the Holocaust that killed 6 million Jews. You had the world that took a look and went, well, we need a place where Jews can feel safe. It makes sense to go ahead and take their homeland and the historic land of Israel, which would be ancient Judea and Samaria, and make that a country, make that Israel. And so the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine recommended partition in 1947. And at the time, they proposed separate Jewish and Arab states. The Jewish leaders accepted it. The Arab states rejected it. And it led to civil unrest. That was the first opportunity for a Palestinian state. All the so-called Palestinians had to do back then would be recognize Israel. Just recognize them and live next to them. And you have your own country here. And they rejected it. And it wasn't the first time, or it was the first time, but it wasn't the last time, obviously. More recently, it happened with the Oslo Accords in 93, and you continually have these countries that will take a look at, oh, you gotta have a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution because from the river to the sea means no Israel, no Jews. And this is the one thing that they have never accepted. But it ties into anti-Semitism, understanding Israel as a Jewish state, that it's not just a country, but it is the place, the Jewish homeland. And there isn't an actual definition for anti-Semitism. It's one that has been adopted by the United States of America and by most of the civilized world. So the accepted definition of anti-Semitism provided by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and it goes like this. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Specific examples are calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of an ideology or religion, accusing Jews as a people of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, while applying double standards not expected of any other democratic nation, using classic stereotypes like world conspiracies, blood libel, controlling governments, holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. And that last one is particularly important, and it kind of sets the stage for where a lot of things are, I think, confused. And so I'll pick up there, and we'll wrap up there next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
On behalf of the First Lady and the entire Trump family, I want to wish all Americans a very, very happy Thanksgiving. It's a great time of the year.
Sure enough is, and do wish you and yours a wonderful Thanksgiving, and it's been a pleasure being here with you, and just want to finish up with what President Trump has rooted out at the edges of the Republican Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene going away. A lot of people are taking a look at this from a point of the company she was keeping and often her messaging, which was anti-Semitic, and the importance that it not have a home within the Republican Party anywhere. Racism, hatred, never a good thing. One of the false kind of premises that has been operating, and this has happened for those who are anti-Semites, regardless of where they fall on the political spectrum. Definition of anti-Semitism, holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. What's different about Israel, again, is that they are a Jewish state. And so you'll have some people that'll say, well, I just don't support Israel. You have some people that will hide behind that, though. And so the question is, for example, let's say that you do not agree with President Trump's policies. You don't agree with Congress's policies. Is it still possible to be a patriotic American? Yes. You're probably misguided, if you're going on the opposite side of Trump on most things, but you can still be a patriotic American. However, if you believe that there should be an abolition of the United States of America, are you anti-American? Yeah, you're anti-American, right? Well, the same thing with Israel. If you don't support Netanyahu's policies, that's one thing. But what a lot of people on the right have been hiding behind is that they really were for the abolition of the state of Israel because it's a Jewish state. And that is what Mark has been working so hard against for so long. And it's one of the things that President Trump, as he has been unifying the world, bringing remarkable peace deals, now is also solving at the very edges of his own party. And so it's another big win for the future of this country. Look, I do hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. No pajamas if you're getting on an airplane. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy wants to make airline civility great again. Been a pleasure being here with you. Talk to you Friday. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.